Lord Jesus Christ, I speak.
各位弟兄姐妹，以及我们邀请的亲朋好友，在这里祝大家平安。
Firstly, greetings of peace to all of our brothers, sisters, as well as our friends who are joining us today.
这一场是一场的算是崇拜的聚会。
Now, this is a form of worship service.
那当然它是有一个布道的主题为题材。
But we will be sharing from a more evangelistic perspective.
虽然是布道的题材，可是却是每一位信徒，包括我们的朋友呢，都可以来听的。
Even so, yet it is a theme that is worth listening even for our own members and friends.
我们要了解的是，世上是否真的有一位神
For we have, or we ought to have an understanding as to whether there is a God in the world.
人人都在谈论，或者是几乎很多人在他们生活当，或者在他们的一生当中，都可能会问到这个问题。
Now, many people might find themselves asking this question in their life,
只是在不同的场合底下来问这个问题。
and perhaps under different circumstances.
有些是在他们受到很大的痛苦的时候，他们问到这个问题。
Some people might ask this question when they are undergoing great pain.
他们会这么样的说：老天好像没有眼。
They might cry out and lament, "Why is it that the heavens do not see my plight?"
他是以另外一个角度来谈说，若是有神的话，为什么他没有看顾我呢？
And so which suggests that in their minds they were thinking, if there is such a God, why isn't he looking out for me?
有些在快乐的时候，在那边默默的思考着这个问题。
Now, some people in moments of bliss, this question might surface.
我得到这么多好处，
I have received so much blessing.
那真的是否是有一个神在造我们吗？
I wonder if there is really a God that is looking out for me.
所以不管我们在怎样的情况，在底下再来谈论这个问题。
Therefore, no matter how we choose to approach this question,
这个问题是值得我们去好好的去探讨的。
it is in fact worthy for us to think about.
有没有神呢？
Is there a God?
这样的一个方式，或者这样的一个想法，是不是一个我们大家不能去理解的呢？
Now, is this question or perspective something that is incomprehensible?
就是我们不能理解到世上是可以有神的。
In a sense that it is not possible for us to understand that there is a God in the world.
那是否是这样的一个是否是我们是被塑造成是这样的呢？
Are we made in such a way?
很多人把神当作是什么？
Now, what do many people treat God as?
他们当作说神他是一个超能力的神，超能力的一个存在者。
To them, God is a supernatural being
他能做万事，
who can do all things,
他能知万事，
and it knows all things,
他也能在无处在什么情况之下，他都能存在。
and can be at all places.
那这些人把这位神当作是一个造物主，
And so these people venerate this being as a creator God,
他造了万物，包括我们。
who has created all things, including us.
那这样的一个神是好像基督徒在敬拜的一位神。
Now, such a God is similar to the God that Christians worship.
那有一些人，他们觉得神是什么呢？
Now, there are other groups of people. How do they reckon God to be?
他们觉得神他虽然是有造我们，
While they agree that there is a God that created man,
那他也是有这个很大的能力的。
and this God has supernatural powers.
但是这个神他造了我们之后，他却不管人类。
However, this God does not look out or look after his creation.
他让人类自己去繁殖，自己去过他们自己要过的生活。
For he gives man the freedom and the liberty to lead their lives and to reproduce.
我们神跟人类呢是完全不一样的，或者是活在不同的空间的。
And therefore, God and human beings, they live in separate and different dimensions.
他做他的事，我们做我们自己的事情。
And we each mind our own business.
那偶尔你就会听到这样的一个神突然间会跑下凡间了。
And once in a while, you might hear of such a God appearing in the mortal realm.
那就来这边来搅乱一下凡间。
And to stir up some issues or happenings.
那这些神就好像希腊神话里面的那种神。
And so this might be similar to the gods in Greek mythology.
那有一些人他们这样理解神，
Now there are others who comprehend God as such.
他们了解说这宇宙当中有一个这样的超能力者，
And to them there is a supernatural force in the
尤
universe.
其是比人类更超凡的。
And it supersedes human beings.
但是呢，他们其实是一个外太空的生存者。
and these are extraterrestrial beings.
他们可能活在另外一个星系，
They might be living in a different solar system,
可能几千年前或者几百万年前，他们来到了这个星球。
and perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, they had once visited our planet.
那在这边造了他们的一个造了人类，造了现在的这个地球。
And they created mankind, and they created Earth as it is today.
那他们有些时候就会再一次的再来，
And once in a while, or there might be a time where they'll come again,
或者是有些时候他们也会来参访我们呢，来拜访我们呢。
or they might occasionally visit us.
所以呢，他们把这样的一个超能力者当作是外太空的这些外来人呢。
And so some people, they hold this view of these supernatural extraterrestrial beings.
那当然有些人他们不相信有神，
And there are others who do not believe that there is a God.
他们不相信他们的命呢是有一个人在操控。
They do not believe that their lives are in the hands of a being.
那人死了之后呢，就是一了百了，什么也没有。
And after a person dies, everything comes to an end.
那我们是属于哪一个？这样怎么样来讨论，或者怎么样来相信这个课题的呢？
Now, for us today, how should we understand or approach this topic?
我们自己本身是相信说有神吗？或者是相信没神，或者相信有神，可是他却不管我们的吗？
Do we ourselves believe that there is a God? Do we believe that there isn't a God? Or do we believe that God is indifferent and doesn't care?
那今天我就以一个角度来给大家来思考。
Today, I'd like to share with you a perspective for your consideration.
那你听了之后，你觉得合理的话，你就可以继续的再了解。
And after listening, if you do find it reasonable, we invite you to come and continue to find out.
我们来看圣经里面所讲的一件事情。
Let's take a look at an incident recorded in the Bible.
我们来看罗马书的第1章，
Let's turn to Romans chapter 1.
罗马书的1章的第19到20节。
Romans chapter 1, verse 19 to verse 20.
罗马书1章的19到20节。
Romans chapter 1, verses 19 to 20. Verse 19. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse.
好，这边圣经给我们这样的一个思考的空间。
So over here, the Bible offers us this perspective to think about.
他讲说，若是有神的话，
And here he says that if there is a God,
那神他是很容易被我们理解的。
then this God would be someone or being that is understandable, comprehensible to us.
就是人可以认识到这个神呢。
And this God is someone that man can come to know of.
就是好像19这边讲神的事情呢，人所能知道的原显明在人的心里面。
Because here in verse 19 it says that what is known of God is made known or manifest in man.
就是在你心中，你就知道说应该会有一个神的存在。
And this also suggests that in your heart you might have this inclination that there is a God that exists.
虽然在这世界上有很多人他们不承认有神，
Even though there are many people in the world that do not acknowledge that there is a God.
可是大部分的人呢都相信说是有神的。
But at the same time, there is a large majority that believes that there is one.
很多人他们不相信有神，是因为他们可能在寻求神的时候，他们没有寻求到他。
Many people do not believe in God because perhaps in their pursuit of God, they do not find Him.
所以他们的结论是说，我找不到，我在需要他的时候找不到他，那他应该不存在。
Therefore, they arrive at the conclusion that since I could not find God when I needed Him, therefore God does not exist.
这就好比好像你失恋之后，你觉得爱情好像不存在，那我不要再谈恋爱，因为没有爱情。
And similarly, if you think about it, you can view it in the form of romance, because you might think that there is no such thing as love because you cannot find someone who loves you.
那大部分的人呢，都感觉到爱情的存在。
Yet many people, they know that love exists.
那所以我们这样角度想，这个圣经的经节这样讲，好像是蛮合理的。
So therefore, if we view it from this angle, then what the Bible records here seems reasonable.
因为一般我们大家都有这样的想法，应该是有一个神明的存在。
Because most people have this concept that there is a God.
我们不要说现代人呐、相信神好像是很老土的一件事情，不文明的一件事情。
Let us not think that people who believe in God these days are old-fashioned or even uncivilized.
那可是其实呢，现代人也很多人也有这样的想法的。
Because in fact, there are many people in modern society that shares this a view of His existence.
而且很多他们也是有博士学位，也是很高智商、高智慧的人。
There are even people who have achieved their doctorates who are very intelligent.
那我们就可以了解到，这样的一个说法，真的是蛮合理的。
And so that is why we can concur that this is a reasonable statement.
那当然，写这经节的他还继续的这样来告诉我们。
And the author here continues to write.
他说第20节，自从造天地以来，
Verse 20, For since the creation of the world,
神的永能和神的神性呢，明明可知的。
His invisible attributes are clearly seen.
为什么？因为我们接着所造之物，就可以晓得这件事情。
And how is this so? Because they are understood by the things that are made.
如果我们有上过去这个五级芝麻山的话，
Now, if you ever had gone up Bukit Timah Hill,
我已经很久没有去了。
I myself have not been up the
可是
hill for a while.
我以前有去过的时候，
But in the past, when I did,
我们不是它有2段嘛，然后有2段路程。
back then there were 2 trails going up.
没有，就是有它一个路程，它有2段。它分成一个是没有这么斜的，可是到了一个阶段它是很斜的。
And so one of the paths that you can take, in the beginning it wasn't steep, but eventually it will become very steep.
可是你到了最高的那个阶段的时候，你会达到一个最高点，达到最高点的时候，
But once you reach the end, which is the highest point,
你发觉那边有个亭子，
you find that there is a pavilion
那
or
好像
shelter.
还有一个那个电缆电线哦，那种 antenna 那种电线哦。
Or there is an antenna there as well.
其实你们知道吗？
Now, do you know
那个电线跟那个房子已经存在了几百万年了。
that the antenna and that house has been there for hundreds and thousands of years.
来佛士还没有来之前就已经在上面了，
Even before Stanford Raffles came to Singapore, that tower and antenna
已
already
经在了很多
existed
万年了，它是自然存在在那边的。
because it is naturally occurring.
所以如果你们今天去看的话，你会发觉它是自然存在在那边的，
And if you were to
很
go
特别
there,
的，那个建筑是很特别的，自然存在在那边的。
and if you were to go there and see this structure, you will come to the conclusion that it just naturally occurred on its own.
那我这样讲的时候，我看大家也在那边觉得我好像在讲废话。
Now, those of you who are listening to me, you might think that I am spewing rubbish.
这个瓶子跟这个电缆呢，怎么可能会自然存在的呢？
How can this building and this antenna exist by itself?
而且还比来佛士还没有来之前就已经存在。
And it was already there before Stanford Raffles came.
我们都知道，用脑子去想就知道，这个是一定有人去建造的。
And so logically speaking, someone would have built these structures.
若是我这样陈述的话，而且在网上一直在那边讲座的话，你们会说我是个疯子啊。
And if I was to continue pushing forth my argument online, you might think that this is a crazy man.
如果我还去找一些资料来证实这件事情啊，
And if I were to find evidence to prove my statement,
那你会觉得我是浪费时间，
then you might feel that I'm merely wasting your
因为
time.
明明每个人从小孩子到大人都知道这个是人所造的。
Because even a young child would know that these structures were made by men.
那你看这个经节的时候，
So when you read this verse,
其实他就是要告诉你这件事情。
it is bringing up this matter from this perspective.
当你看到这整个世界，
And that is when you view the world,
你怎么可能你会说它是自然存在的吗？自然呈现的吗？
would you conclude that this world naturally existed on its own?
我们去想一下，如果我们真正有去研究过这件事情的话，
Now, if you have put some serious research into this,
那你就发觉说，我们现在所活的这个地球啊，
you would find that this planet Earth that we live in,
它是很微妙的。
it is very
微妙 amazing 哦，
it's very amazing.
它很微妙，因为什么？因为它离太阳远一点的话，我们就没办法，就会被冻死。
Because if it is just a slight distance further away from the sun, then this whole planet would be freezing.
那如果我们离太阳近一点的话，我们整个地球啊，就是被烤焦了。
And if we are a little bit too close to the sun, then our planet will be scorched.
如果我们没有月亮的话，
Now, if we do not have the moon,
我们这整个地球也是不能成型的。
our Earth would not be able to sustain
我们这
itself.
地球的存在，其实它是很微妙，因为它的存在不是好像不是偶然的。
Therefore, the existence of the environment of our planet Earth, it is truly a miracle because it can't come about just by chance.
那我们再看自己本身的话，
And if we take a look at our own self,
我们的身体不是你觉得是真的可以自己是，当然是父母亲所给予我们的一个身体啊。
now our bodies, naturally, they come from our parents.
可是很多时候是不听使唤的，
But yet many a times,
不听使唤，不听你的说，不听你的你要他好像你要头发变黑的话，他不能变黑的。
many a times, you cannot control certain processes or certain parts of your being.
不是吗？我们很想头发变黑啊，
For example, we want our hair to turn black,
那个画出定的很希望他的头发可以出来啊。
or we hope that our hair will be able to grow.
那可是不可能的，我们要他，可是他却不听我们的。
But as much as we want it to occur, yet our bodies may not follow what we want it to do.
你还讲说这是我们的身体，这是我可以控制的身体。
And yet we claim ownership of our bodies that it is in our control.
可是有些时候你要上厕所都没办法去控制的。
But there may be even times when you're not able to control your bowels when you want to go to the toilet.
不是吗？你还被上厕所这件事情控制吗？啊，没办法，然后讲到一半，突然间肚子痛，没办法控制啊！我现在不能肚子痛，可是还却是肚子痛。
So for example, if I were to speak on a sermon and I have the stomach ache and I need to rush to the toilet, I can't control my body. It has to happen.
可是这个身体却是你自己的哦，
Yet ironically, this body is yours.
那可是你却没办法控制它。
Yet we are not able to have complete control over it.
可是它却是很微妙的活着，让你来善用。
Even so, it is still a very amazing structure that is in our use.
甚至很多时候，现在医学虽然这么昌明，还是不理解有一些部位它是怎么样去应用的。
And even modern day science is still trying to uncover certain biological workings in certain parts of our bodies.
那你说这个身体，这个我们这个世界所造出来的，难道真的是自己突然出现的吗？
And therefore, you might wonder, are these things truly naturally occurring on its own?
我们来看这个诗篇的19篇，
Let's take a look at Psalm number 19.
诗篇的第19篇，
Psalm number 19,
的第1到第6节，
verse 1 to verse 6.
诗篇的第19篇的第1到第6节。
Psalm number 19, verses 1 to 6. Verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is like the bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices like a strong man to run its race. Its rising is from one end of heaven, and its circuit to the other end, and there is nothing hidden from its heat.
好，这边作诗的他在观看这个天空的时候，他有这样的一个想法。
And now over here, the psalmist has this reflection as he views the heavens.
他说：“诸天述说这神的荣耀，
And he begins by saying, The heavens declare the glory of God,
那穹苍传扬他的手段。”
and the firmament shows his handiwork.
就是他在陈述一个很简单的一件事情，
And so he's actually stating a simple fact,
也是我们大家可以接受的一件事情。
and something which is we all can accept.
就是好比刚才我讲说，我们上虎吉芝麻山那个建筑物啊，是有人所造的，这样简单的一件事情，这么容易接受的一件事情。
And this is akin to the analogy I brought up earlier, and that is if you were to go up Bukit Timah Hill, you will naturally acknowledge that the structures there were created by someone.
那当他看到天空的时候，
So when this psalmist views the heavens,
他只可以说这切都是神的创造，神的美妙的创造。
he can only attribute the heavens to the glorious creation of God.
所以当我们刚才好像如果我们看在罗马书那边这样讲述的时候，
And so for us, similarly what we have read in Romans earlier,
他说在创造的时候，他已经表露出了，在这创造的时候，然后在这万物的当中，你就可以看得出神他的能力。
it attests to this, which is from creation, you can see the power or the attributes of God,
你可以看到神本身啊。
and you can see God himself.
那这件事情不是我们不能去接受的一个想出来的一个妄想的一件事。
And this is not an idle or empty thought that we merely conjure up.
那这个是大家也可以接受的一件事情。
For this is something that is acceptable.
所以如果我们看回去罗马书的话，你会了解，这个罗马书作者所写的，是我们每个人类都可以接受的一件事。
So therefore, what we have read earlier in Romans chapter 1, you would find that his position is one which human beings can accept.
看起来这万物真正的是好像有人在创造，
For it does seem to suggest that all creation had to be created by someone.
而且它不是好像小孩子在画图画一样，
And it is not, or rather it is different than a child who is perhaps doing his drawings.
小孩子画图画的时候，你是看不懂他在画什么的。
Because when a young toddler is drawing a picture, you might not understand what he's trying to
他
draw.
会告诉你这个是什么动物，可是你看这个什么动物就是几条横几条线，怎么可能是个动物呢？
So the toddler might say, this is an animal, but to you it is just a couple of lines.
它的太阳为什么是黑色的？那太阳是黑色的，太阳是黄色的嘛？
And so why is the sun that he drew a black color? Isn't it supposed to be at least yellow?
我们看到这个宇宙的时候，我们了解它不是小孩子在画图一样，
And so that is why when we view the universe, it is not as if it is created by a young
它是
child.
有个智慧的能者，大能者在那边把它创造出来。
For the entire universe must have been created by an intelligent being or creator.
每样东西都有它的存在的价值，
Because everything in existence has its purpose and value.
虽然我们看起来好像没有，可是其实是有的。
On one hand, while we might not be able to see it, but actually there is.
当然，你说这是你的说法了。
Now, of course, you might say that this is our perspective.
我所相信的是什么？我相信的是进化论。
Whereas I myself, I believe in evolution.
那进化论是说，我们开始是从一个单细胞里面慢慢进化而来的。
And so evolution, to put it short, is that that we came from single-celled organisms.
那我们从这个物种变成了另外一个物种，慢慢繁衍出不同的物种出来。
And so we evolve across different species until what we are today.
为什么会突然间会有产生出这个物种呢？
Now, how is it that these species will first appear?
那他说不是因为有智慧，不是因为智慧的问题，
Or the first, it is not a matter of intelligence.
因为什么？因为他需要胜过上一代，就是他要智者生存嘛。哦，它的原理是这样。
Rather, it is all about survival of the fittest.
如果我需要这样的生存，我就要把自己变成另外一个物种。
Because in order to survive, you need to evolve.
那他不是为了要让这世界有不同的物种来慢慢的使这个我们所活的地方更好，就是每个人扮演他不同的角色，他不是这样的。
And the purpose of evolution itself is not to fill up the world or the planet with many different organisms and species in an ecosystem.
那如果我们真的相信这个进化论的话，
Now, if we were to subscribe to evolution,
那其实它也有很多我们可以去思考是否是可以接受的问题。
in fact, there are some points that we ought to reconsider as to whether they are acceptable.
最近在做这 DNA 的这种研究啊，
In recent work concerning DNA,
他们就突然间发现到，
they came upon this discovery
因为他们去采取了不同的物种的那个 DNA。
because they were collecting DNA from different specimens.
那他们去找到的时候，他们却发现，物种的产生啊，是突然间在好几万年前突然间自己产生的。物种就是不同的 kinds 不同的 species。
So the different species they came about spontaneously many years ago.
一出来的时候就是这么多物种。
And when they emerged, it was just like that. All these different species emerged spontaneously at the same
它
time.
跟进化论所讲的不一样，因为进化论是讲说它是从一个单细胞慢慢演变出这么多物种。
And so this runs contrary to evolution, which subscribes to the belief that there is a slow process of evolution.
那它可是这个研究，他们却发现到物种是突然间产生的。
Whereas now you have this recent discovery that suggests this spontaneous appearance of all these species.
那这是一点我们可以去讨论的啦。
And so now this is a point for us to think about further.
那如果我们真的是借着进化而来的，
And now, secondly, if we truly come about from evolution,
那我们知道说人类啊，它其实在智者生存的这样的一个方式，在一个框架之下，我们其实不是最强的。
then if you view it from the frame of the survival of the fittest, then you would find that actually human beings, we are really not the fittest.
我们可能最有智商了，
Perhaps you might be the most intelligent.
可是以其他方式来讲，我们真的不是最强的那一个，
However, in other dimensions, we are not the strongest.
那就应该要产生出物种的改变了，就是要开始要有进化。
And so what this means is that in these areas that we are lacking, we ought to undergo a form of evolution.
可是我们现在发觉有没有人类在进化呢？
But yet, when we look around us, do we see any human beings that are evolving?
我们不要说人类，我们看其他的物种，有没有其他的物种在进化呢？
Now, let alone human beings, if we just look at other species, do we see any species that are evolving?
那我们如果去看的话，我们真的去查考的话，科学是跟你讲说没有，
And if you were to study about this, you will find that there isn't.
甚至他们还讲说，他们也没办法找到正在进化中的正在进化中的猿猴。
And to the point that science would also tell you that they can't find any species that are in the middle process of evolving.
找不到活着的，也找不到死掉的。
They can't find both a living specimen as well as a fossilized specimen of this evolution.
所以其实进化论它只不过也是给我们一个做参考的一个思考一个思想而已啊。
And so this concept of evolution itself, it is merely a concept for us to consider.
那如果我们真的去做个比较的话，是否是进化或者是神创的呢？你发觉神创的好像比较合理，可以接受。
And if you were to actually do a comparison between evolution and creation, you will find that creation itself is in fact easier to accept.
那这个就是我们看到刚才所讲的那个经节，它所讲出来的一个很简单可以理解的事。
And this is what we can derive from the passage which we have just read, which is a simple understanding.
那如果我们回去刚才罗马书第1章的话，
And so if you were to turn back to the passage we read in Romans chapter 1,
罗马书第1章它的第19节这边讲，
in chapter 1 verse 19, Romans chapter 1 verse 19,
这边神的事情，人所能知道的，显明在人的心里面。
because what may be known of God is manifest in them.
那到底是什么事情，我们可以感觉到神的事情可以在我们心里面的呢？
So what is it that is in us that allows us to know God?
但刚才我讲说神啊，这个人物啊，他其实在我们当中可以理解到的。
Because I earlier mentioned that we human beings would be able to come to the knowledge of this God.
可是神到底在其他方面怎么显明了他自己本身呢？
But how else does God manifest himself?
就是在一个我们感觉到应该是可以来做参考的这件事情上，就是在道德上。
We can view it from the perspective of morality.
我们不管在什么，不管是活在哪一个种族、哪一个国家、哪一个文化，
No matter which country, culture, or race that we come from,
你会发觉说，我们的不管哪一个文化当中或者哪一个种族当中，我们都有相同、差不多一样的这种的道德的标准。
you would find that we would have had some similar standard of morality across these different cultures.
当然，有一些文化他们有一点道德标准有点改变了。
Now, on one hand, certain cultures might have different standards of morality.
可是当我们在就是拿整个地球的人物来讲的话，每个文明来讲的话，它的道德标准是一样的。
But if we view it from the totality of civilization, you will find that the standards of morality can be quite similar.
我们大家都说不能杀人，
All of us agree that we should not murder.
我们大家都说我们不能说骗话。
All of us agree that deception is not good.
那如果我们大家也相信说我们不能偷窃，
And all of us would agree that we should not steal.
还有很多的我们大家都都可以接受不可以去做的。
And there are many other facts of life which we would concur that we cannot commit.
你说这是因为要保障我们自己的利益，
So you might say that this is actually out of self-interest.
不是吗？我们要保障自己利益，所以不要人家偷我们东西啊。
After all, we want to preserve ourselves, therefore we do not want others to steal from us.
那你说这是因为是这样，所以道德标准是这个社会所慢慢的演变而出来的。
And so, as a result of our own self-interest, these standards of morality, they slowly emerge as civilization progresses.
就是我们大家过后一起讨论，我们大家不可以做这个，好，我们以后就不可以做这件事情。
Because society comes to an understanding that they will not commit certain acts or offenses.
那是否是这样呢？
Now, is this truly how it came about?
那如果我们好好去思考的话，
If we think about this,
我们人都是自私的，
all human beings are out for our own
我
interests.
们不是自己想到自己吗？
Do we not only think for our own benefit?
我们不是很想说，我们去一家餐馆吃了就拍拍屁股就走吗？
Do we not hope that we can go to a restaurant, have a good meal, and just leave?
我们不是希望说进到超市里面要拿什么就拿什么，不用还钱我们就走了。
Wouldn't you like to go to the supermarket to take anything you want and to leave without paying?
你觉得在超市里面的有这种想法的人，会不会多过那些你们不可以，你们一定要还钱，会不会多过呢？
If you view it in terms of proportion, do you think that there will be more people who wouldn't want to pay than those who would gladly pay?
我相信大家应该会想说，我们最好是不要还钱的。
I believe that naturally inside you might prefer not to pay for anything.
那这样的话，如果我们应该可以大家在当时候一起讨论，我们大家讨论好不好？我们今天就不要还钱吧，我们大家就拿了就走。
And so imagine if this majority of people who do not want to pay, they discuss together and they all agree that let us just leave without paying.
因为那个要我们还钱的是那个店主，不是我们，我们又不是店主，他是他店，又不是我的店。
Because after all, the only person who wants us to pay is a store owner and he is just one person.
那这样我们大家讲好了，我们就可以办了，因为我们的道德是大家讲好就可以了。
And so therefore, because the majority of us, we have discussed this, and so we all agree to this, therefore this is the standard of morality that we have all chosen to adhere to.
那我们也不用向任何人交代，因为我们大家已经讲好了。
And we don't have to be accountable to anybody else because we have already agreed with this.
那是否是这样呢？
Now, is this truly the case?
我相信我们大家都不会这么样去想，
I believe that we wouldn't think in such a
因
manner.
为我们大家在心里面都好像知道这件事情好像不对。
Because inside our hearts, we know that this is not right.
你讲的是很合理啊，
While it does sound reasonable,
甚至你还告诉我这个店主啊，他是洗黑钱所得来的，他的钱是洗黑钱得来，他这家店就是为了洗黑钱的。
and you might even go on to add that this store owner itself is laundering money,
那他也是贩卖毒品的，
and he is also peddling drugs.
我们这样拿他的物品啊，我们不还钱，那是合理的。
Therefore, it is only right for us to take his goods and products.
甚至我们达到了劫富济贫的这种道德啊。
And in fact, this is what should rightly happen to such a person.
所以我们大家说好就可以了。
So as long as we come to a common understanding, then that's good enough.
那可是我们大家都心里面知道说这是不对、不合理的。
Yet deep down in our hearts, we know that this is not right.
那为什么大家会感觉到不合理，会知道不合理呢？
Now, how is it that we have this feeling in our heart that this is not right?
这道德到底是谁放在我们心当中的？
Now, who or what has implanted this concept within our heart?
那就是好像刚才我们看的罗马书外面所讲的，
And so this is akin to what we have read in Romans.
神他显现在我们当，就是神他造万物的时候，
And that is when God created all things.
他也让我们了解到什么应当做，什么不应当做。
He has also planted in us this knowledge of what we ought to do and what we shouldn't do.
所以我们每个人都知道什么应该做，什么应该不当做的。
And that is why all human beings, they have a certain concept of what they can do and cannot do.
那这个是进化论没办法演变出来的，
And this is something which cannot be explained from
因
evolution.
为进化只是进化什么？只是进化物种，
Because evolution, you're just talking about the propagation of species.
它不是在进化道德。
It is
你
not
道德没办法这样，反而你进化的时候，你的道德可能会更改变。
because in the process of natural selection, it is not morality that is evolving. In fact, if you read from the angle, morality should be devolving.
那如果今天我们的道德是由一个人来放在我们心里面的话，
So now if you view it from this angle, and there is someone or a being that has put morality in our
那
hearts,
那我们大家就很容易去理解。
then it becomes easier for us to understand.
怪不得我们啊，就算到了非洲，我们也不会做犯法的事情。怪不得我们去了非洲啊，就算到了那种没有人的地方，我们也知道有些事情我们不当去做的。
And so, for example, even if you go to Africa, to a place where there is no one, we know that there are certain things that we still wouldn't do,
就是我们也会合法，去做合法的事情。
and we would still abide by the law.
为什么呢？因为这是神的神性放在我们里面了，给我们了解到。
It is because this is the nature or the attribute of God that has been planted in us.
所以以这样角度来看这个经节的话，你就发觉这个经节真的是在讲述了我们大家都可以理解的事情。
And so, therefore, with this perspective, it becomes easier to understand what these verses are trying to say.
也证明了说，这个经节所讲的神是存在的，真的是存在。
And they also attest to the existence of God.
那也是我们今天基督徒所相信的。
And this is what we Christians today believe
我
in.
们都相信神他在我们当中，
We believe that God is in our midst.
他是造我们的神，
He is our creator.
那他也给予我们一个道德标范，应该懂得怎么样去行。
And He has given us these standards of morality, and we know how to conduct ourselves.
所以既然有神的存在，
Therefore, since a God exists,
那我们就应当来好好的来寻求他。
therefore we ought to seek Him out.
那神他是可以给我们寻求到的。
And God is searchable.
其实很多人他们说他们在寻求神，
And there are many people who claim that they are still seeking or searching for God.
那当他们在跪下来求神的时候，
And when they kneel down and when they ask from God,
那其实神也真的给他们找到了。
and many of them in fact found God.
那好像我们在教会里面也有很多这样的一个见证呢。
For example, in our church, we have many of such testimonies.
等一下我们聚完会的时候，就有一个姐妹她会做她的见证。
And after this service, we have an additional testimony session which will be shared by a sister of our church.
当然，我们希望我们每一位我们的朋友呢，也可以试着去找这位神。
And we sincerely hope that our friends who are here with us would also want to seek out this God.
我们这位神，他是值得我们大家来敬拜。
For the God whom we worship is indeed worthy of our worship.
为什么我们要去敬拜他呢？
Now, why should we worship this God?
经常你会听到基督徒会讲说，你要信神啊，不是他就会他会拯救你，不信他会诅咒你啊。
You might hear some Christians say that you need to believe in this God, then He will bless you. If not, you might be cursed.
听起来这个神很霸道，
So it might perhaps seem to you as if this God is very tyrannical
他只会强迫我们来敬拜他。
because he forces people to worship Him.
可是神他是否真的强迫我们来敬拜他呢？
However, does God really force us to worship Him?
其实敬拜神是一个本能呢、
In reality,
很自然的一个本能。
worshiping God itself, it is a natural practice or an act.
如果我要来做个比较，就好比孩子孝顺父母亲一样。
If I were to make a comparison, it would be akin to a child honoring his or her parents.
为什么今天孩子会觉得说，我的父母亲为什么一定要我来孝敬他呢？
Now, if you think about it of our children today, why do they feel that they have to be filial to their parents?
原来那个家庭它是有问题的，因为那个家庭是有问题的，
It could be because that in their household there might be some problems.
所以那个孩子会感觉到这父母亲强迫他来要来把他当父母亲。
And so a child who is in this problematic family might think that his parents are forcing him to be filial to them.
可是，一般上的家庭当中，
But if you were to grow up in a typical household,
孩子孝敬父母亲是个很自然的一件事。
children showing filial piety to their parents is something that comes about very naturally.
我们不用说的，它就存在在我们心当中，我们也知道要怎么样去行的。
You do not have to overtly talk about it. Rather, it is something in our hearts that we know how to carry it out.
所以敬拜神其实就好比这样，
And so worshiping God is similar to this.
我们今天敬拜神就好像孩子要孝敬父母一样。
When we talk about worshiping God, it is similar to a child being respectful or being filial to his parents.
那我们这样的敬拜，那到底有什么好处呢？
So what benefits or what good can come out of our worship?
其实这位神他也把他自己当作是我们的父亲了。
In actuality, our God also views himself as our Father.
如果我们来看诗篇的103篇的话，
Let's take a look at Psalm number 103.
诗篇的103篇，
Psalm number 103.
我们来看第13节，
And let's read verse 13.
诗篇的103篇的第13节。
Psalm number 103, verse 13. Verse 13. As a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him.
好，这边诗篇的作者告诉我们，这神呢，就好比父亲一样，
So here the psalmist describes God as a father
他会连续他的儿女，他会疼惜他的儿女啊，
who pities his children,
就是说他会照顾他的儿女。
a father who cares for his children.
有一位这位神，原来他是好比我们的父亲一样。
Because this God of ours is just like our Father.
所以，我们今天来敬拜他，那就是很自然的事啊。
And that is why when we worship God, it is a very natural act.
而且他会以父亲的角度来看顾我们，来照顾我们。
And God will also look out and look after us as our Father.
所以，当我们在寻找他的时候，他会给我们寻得见，因为他就好像找回他的儿子一样。
That is why when you seek God, you will find Him, because to God He is just like a father who is finding for his lost son.
那今天若是我们来敬拜他的话，我们就会体验到这样的一件事。
And therefore, if we were to seek God, we would also experience this.
那这也是我们每个基督徒所体验到的一件事情。
And this is something which all Christians would have experienced.
所以，希望我们的朋友可以以这样的角度来看这件事情。
And therefore, it is hoped that our friends and listeners would be able to view it from this perspective.
我们的这位神呢，好比天父，他要来照顾我们。
That our God is like a father who wants to care for us.
那他在等待我们，
And He is waiting for us.
也希望我们可以跨出这一步来寻求他。
And He is hoping that we would take the first step to seek Him.